Good morning and welcome to the show. My name is Koi. Now we're still talking about some of the common eating disorders that are said to be secretive killers. Now most people overeat every now and then, and it's not uncommon to occasionally feel as though we've eaten more than we should have. However, regularly consuming large amounts of food when you're not feeling hungry, usually to the point of feeling overly full and at a much faster rate than usual, may be a warning sign for a disorder called binge eating disorder. Binge eating disorder is similar to bulimia, except that the person does not get rid of the food after eating. Let's hear more about this disorder from Dr. Tonya Shaw. That's coming up next on Mid-Morning Lifestyle.
Lots of people find comfort in food. After all, it's often at the heart of our happiest celebrations. In almost every occasion, the presence of food cannot be missed. Be it a birthday celebration, a wedding, a funeral, or a get-together with family and friends. Most people will sometimes eat much more than they normally do on special occasion. There's nothing wrong with that. People with binge eating disorder, on the other hand, have a different relationship with food.
65% of people who have binge eating disorder are obese. So there is a strong link. What you eat and I guess the quantity that you eat will determine your weight. The difference with binge eating disorder is it's people who are eating in a very feeling very out of control, in a kind of continuous, excessive way, and feeling unable to manage what they eat or to stop what they eat.
If you are used to eating big meals, your stomach has been trained to expand and stretch more than a person who is used to eating smaller meals.
Often your satiety responses, your fullness response is not, you're not tuned into it. Because you've had periods of restriction, you're more in a starvation mode, which means your satiety response shuts down so that you can overeat. Because if you haven't eaten for a while, then what you need to do is eat more. So the fact that we're often restricting and fasting drives the fact that we then binge eat. But people eat well beyond where they're full, well beyond any level of comfort, and would then end up, at a stage where they actually feel nauseous.
While most people with other eating disorders are female, an estimated third of those with binge eating disorder are male.
Generally, it's something that develops in one's late teens and early 20s. There are genetic or family components, and that there is having a first-degree relative with binge eating disorder increases your chances. But dieting is one of the risk factors. People who go on diets and begin to disturb their relationship with food and their basal metabolic rate and the way in which they deal with food can cause themselves to then want to binge eat to make up for it.
Eating disorders sometimes intercross, and instead of suffering from one of them, a victim can find herself in a spiral which begins from anorexia, which then develops to bulimia and may end up binging.
When you eat, your body produces insulin because it knows it's going to break down that food. If you then throw up that food, you've got levels of insulin there which are going to then lower your blood sugar, which is going to make you hungry. So when you binge and throw up, you're more likely to get hungry. Now, if you get hungry and you're trying to restrict what you eat, you're more likely to binge eat. Because if I've restricted what I eat, when I do actually come around to eating, or when I've had long periods of not eating, when I do start to eat, I'm now going to eat more than I would otherwise eat because my body is in starvation mode. So the fact that I'm restricting or purging and not eating on a regular basis will cause me to binge eat. And then, of course, when I binge eat, I feel terrible. I've maybe broken my food rules. I haven't managed to have the willpower. That's often a word you hear in this area, which it's a complicated phrase, but they haven't the willpower to manage to diet as they wanted to, so they feel more ashamed of themselves, so they're more likely to purge again. So you end up with this very vicious circle.
Instead of going through a continuous cycle of overeating and sometimes throwing up, in the case of bulimia, Dr. Shaw gives us the best advice. Simply listen to your body.
Well, the body's very well designed, and we know what we need. And actually, if we eat when we're hungry and stop when we're full, then we will have a very good guide as to what we need. And our bodies can tell us specifically whether we need more protein or more carbohydrate or more fluid, or those messages are all there. The trouble is that we distort them with society's pressures. I mean, think about how important food is. We bake cakes to celebrate. We give people food to thank them or to welcome them. We go out for meals when we want to celebrate something. So food has got all this emotional component attached to it. It's not just about being a fuel. So often people can feel they need to eat food that they've been given in order to respect the person who has fed them, when they may not be hungry. If there are messages in the house about how you need to finish everything that's on your plate, and yet somebody else fills your plate, how do you get a child to trust their own eating? So really what you need to do is trust their own bodies and trust their own instincts, that they will make good decisions about food as long as it's left fairly uncomplicated.
People who eat a lot don't necessarily have binge eating disorder. They might just have a huge appetite. But several signs distinguish someone who binge eats from someone with a healthy appetite.
In kids with a binge eating disorder, you would be looking for, missing food, eating food in secret, wanting to have meals quiet, being afraid of having meals in public. So you're looking at patterns of the way kids are interacting with food and the kind of food they want to eat, and any distortion there is something you're going to be paying attention to and wary of.
Going on a crash diet isn't the best or the safest way to lose weight. Crash diets are appealing because they promise quick results.
You know, we would say to people in the beginning, don't try to lose any more than 5 to 10% of your current weight. The idea that you're going to suddenly lose, 20 kilos isn't realistic, and it means that people won't recognize the successes that they have had. They might have lost 3 or 4 kilos, but because they've decided they have to lose 30, they don't value what they have lost, and yet that weight loss would be significant and would be beneficial. We're also really trying to help people lose weight slowly, because very quick fad diets that guarantee you immediate weight loss, well, usually they don't. Usually it's just water, or you've broken down muscle, or there's something else that's happening. And so the minute you stop that diet, you go back to your old eating patterns and you regain the weight. I mean, it's got a 95% failure rate, dieting. Well, there's an increased risk of diabetes, and obviously there are cholesterol problems and then cardiac problems that go with that, and also high blood pressure. They're the 3 main things that are affected by binge eating and by obesity. They're the things that people have more of. But we have a real dilemma in that, very many health problems are exacerbated by the issues with obesity in the world, and many people are overweight, heavier than they should healthily be, and yet dieting doesn't work, and extreme dieting just leads to all kinds of other problems. So we really have to have a much more balanced and moderate attempt to deal with the problems than we do at the moment. It's so difficult I don't know whether you can put a figure on that, because obesity is such a big phrase. Somebody is rated as being obese when their body mass index is above 30, and obviously some people's body weight goes way above that. So the more obese you are, the greater the risk of health complications, the more likely it is that it will kill you.
What is the treatment approach?
What you're trying again to do is go for a very balanced and pre-planned eating plan. So again, that someone is eating regularly, because the frequency of eating is what's important. And if they know that they're going to be fed in a very regular way and that's predictable, they're less likely to be anxious about food and eating, and you're hoping that they would be then less inclined to overeat. The difficulty is most people who are binge eating and who are overweight are often trying to go on very extreme diets, and they're unrealistic and doomed to fail. And so a lot of what we're trying to do with people who are binge eaters is to try and limit their expectations of diets and make that a much slower and more reasonable process.
It can be difficult to overcome binge eating and food addiction. Unlike other addictions, food is necessary for survival, so you don't have the option of avoiding it. Instead, you must develop a healthy relationship with food.
Because a lot of the distortions in anorexia are related to the nutritional deficiency, so their brains are not functioning the same way because they are nutritionally deprived. I think in binge eating disorder, people are aware of their size and are desperately trying to do everything that they can to get their weight down. But the trouble is they often use very extreme and restrictive diets or rules, beliefs about how they should manage the problem. And the more they restrict themselves, the more rigid a diet they go on, the more chaotic they feel, the more their eating gets out of control. So often the very way they try and solve the problem keeps the problem going. There's also a very high comorbidity with substance abuse. So people with binge eating disorder are struggling with poor impulse control. And that's not a matter of not having the will, but they struggle to be able to manage themselves and control their impulses in ways that are going to be effective for them.
Let's find out the problem for today on Ties That Bind up next.
Pastoral ministry for the last over 10 years. Quite a number of people that have gone through their marriages and have passed through premarital counseling. We are so happy with the kind of life we are living. And I would want to say that premarital counseling is very important. There are a number of scholars that I do agree with. One of my friend called Collins, in his book Christian Counseling, he talks of four main importance of premarital counseling. He talks of the fact that it is preventive. That is, it gives the two people that are planning to marry an opportunity to be prepared on what lies ahead of them. The second reason is that it is both informative and educative. So during this time, they are taught on how to handle issues that revolves around marriage. For example, you could talk about how to go about conflict or resolution, issues of sex in marriage, or effective parenting. So that is important. The other thing is that it is preparatory. They actually prepare, these are people that were probably brought up maybe by single parents, and they did not have good time to be taught exactly what needs to be done. So during this time, they are prepared for what marriage is all about. And then the last one that I would want to add is that it enhances a healthier, happier and long-lasting relationship in marriage. So it's important for every person to attend premarital counseling.
People suffering from the binge eating disorder tend to be overweight. They're usually aware that their eating habits are abnormal but find little comfort because of society's tendency to stereotype the overweight individual. Now, words like just go on a diet are as emotionally devastating to a person suffering from compulsive overeating just as just eat can be to a person suffering from anorexia. Let's learn to be more sensitive about others and start looking around for the signs of these disorders so that we can curb them before it's too late. Send us your comments on Midmorning at standupmedia.co.ke. Visit our Facebook page as well. It's KTN Midmorning. That's it for today. We do have more for you tomorrow, so be sure to join us.